This week, Patrick joins me to discuss the prevalence of cat-based horror manga, including the mysterious Neko Musume, Cat Face, and more. Why are there all these scary cat manga? But first, if you're enjoying this podcast, support the show at patreon.com/deconcomics for as little as $2 a month. With your pledge of at least $4 a month, you can access hours of bonus commercial-free podcasts. And if you give at the $10 level, you can review the book of your choice with me on the podcast. Pledge your support now at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
And this is Patrick.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo, and I'm talking with Patrick in Kumamoto, my podcasting partner for the Law of Equivalent Exchange. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just got, yesterday I spent most of the day helping out a comics-related event. They had like a 10 comic, like book-sized, comics for 300 yen, kind of, not really a flea market because it's all from the stock of the MPO that I volunteer for, the Kumamoto Manga Museum project. And we've actually built a comics museum, but we still have like thousands and thousands of all these comics. And so along with the local newspaper, they did an event yesterday downtown. Made it all very, social distancing and, limited. But yeah, it went pretty well. I myself bought...
Well, I saw your photo on social media somewhere, a bunch of boxes of comics, and it sounded like you were targeting them.
Well, I let, last year, I have to admit, when we did this, I went in before anybody started buying stuff, and I picked out the little things that I wanted. But this time I said, I decided I was going to let the crowd pick what they want to pick, and then if anything's left for me, that's destiny. And so I only came home with 35 books.
Okay, only 35. Good. Have you read them all yet?
Oh yeah, sure. It's mostly girls' comics, including The Legend of Wolf Boy, which, why wouldn't you have this in your collection? Because it's got a boy who is a wolf. I mean, come on.
Is it Teen Wolf?
No. Well, he's a teen. And he's a wolf, so in answer to your
he's not Michael J. Fox.
No, he's not. But
well, speaking of animals, I had asked Patrick to come on again and give us one of his manga-related talks, and we settled on talking about characters with cat eyes.
I know.
Of all things. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it stuck out to me from the list you sent me because I wasn't really sure what you would say about it. I was just kind of curious. But I hadn't quite noticed that was a thing in manga. But so name some manga characters that have cat eyes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to applaud your bravery for having me on to talk about characters with cat eyes. Well, I mean, come on. You've got the cat-eyed boy. I mean, how more direct can you get? You've got cat-eyed boy, and then you've got cat girl, and they're both came around the same time. Okay. Most of the characters I'm mentioning are from like two creators.
Okay, and who are they?
So, have you ever heard of Gegege no Kitaro?
Sure. Uh-huh.
Okay, so Gegege no Kitaro's creator is Mizuki Shigeru,
Does that have an English title? Gegege no Kitaro?
I don't know if it does. I don't know. I think they've, like, because Gegege doesn't translate.
No.
So I think they've just kept it like that. But I'm sure, like, if they wanted to translate it, you know, Kitaro, the kanji used in his name is kind of like the character for like weird or strange or spooky, you know. So and Taro is a generic boy name, so you know.
Yeah, I'm looking here. It looks like that's what it's called in English too.
Gegege no Kitaro. Right. So Gegege no Kitaro was a hit comic, but before it was a hit comic serialized in a weekly magazine, it was a comic. I mean, it was a character just called Graveyard Hakaba no Kitaro. Graveyard Kitaro, where he's even less cute than in the popular manga, but it was made specifically for rental comics shops, what we call kashihon comics.
And this is like in the 50s, 1950s?
Late 50s. And so this comic is one of the comics that featured kind of a cat girl type character. First, it was just a regular human girl who had some cat affinity. But eventually, when the series that was serialized in regular magazines and not just rental comics, then she became a full-fledged yokai character who is normally a very helpful, sweet girl, but she hates rats. And whenever somebody has fish around her, she goes into full cat mode.
Okay, now the cat-eyed boy, was that the same creator?
It's not, actually.
Okay,
it's not. So, what I need to mention before I talk about switch over to the different creator is that Mizuki Shigeru, even before he did Gegege no Kitaro and Hakaba no Kitaro, he did a rental comic just featuring a cat girl called Kaiki Neko Musume, which I would translate as the strange cat girl. And his Kashihon period is so interesting because he basically like takes panels directly from several 1950s US horror comics. And in this one, he uses panels from a story called Amnesia, which has recently been collected in 4-color Fear. It was originally used in the Chamber of Chills, number 17, which is a Harvey horror comic, way back, 1953. And then you have all the cat panels he took from Chamber of Chills 16. Amnesia, the story Amnesia is drawn by Warren Creamer, and he's a interesting character because he was basically, they said, he was kind of like your knockoff artist. He could draw in other people's styles, and so he was an interesting guy. But this story, Curse of the Black Panther, he liberally lifted lots of art for his stories, and he did this a lot during the rental comic years, and you can find it in Mizuki Shigeru's like autobiography that when he went from the paper theater shows where he was doing like 10 panels of art to tell a story for these Kamishibai paper theater guys, he switched to rental comics, and he wasn't doing very well at the beginning, and his dad brought him a big stack of comics because he worked in the GHQ, you know, post-war Japan. You know, what do they call that when they're the occupation, when Japan was occupied? Yeah. And so his dad gave him a bunch of comics. Let's, maybe you can use these. And so he especially glommed on to those Chambers of Chills issues. But the Neko Musume story it's the same name as the character he used later, but it's a different story.
Different character.
Yeah, he likes revisiting that theme. You want to hear the story because it's pretty freaky.
Okay, kind of like the Tracy Ullman Simpsons.
That's right. That's right. In fact, the art style is actually pretty cool. It's got this Gay and Wilson, no variation in the line, but it's got that kind of touch to it. And so anyway, this guy, he's a cat hunter or something, and he goes to this one house where there's a cat, and it's this huge cat, and they fight each other, and he finally is able to kill the cat. And when he gets home, his wife is dead. His pregnant wife, she's just dead, and she's got cat prints all over her body, like the cat's been walking all over her dead body. And as he's burying his wife, or this old lady says, "You killed my cat, and now you're going to suffer the curse." And later on, a baby crawls out of the wife's grave.
Okay. That's weird.
That happens all the time in Japan, Tim. Didn't you know that? So baby crawls from the grave. We know this is not going to be good, right? And the baby looks completely normal and cute until it sees fish, and then it goes meow, and it goes all kitty cat on that fish, with the fangs and the cat eyes. So time passes. He's raising his daughter as a regular girl. She's going to school, and she's doing fine until somebody has fish for lunch. She's like, "Give me that, meow," And so I guess rumors spread about her existence, and she's kidnapped by a circus. But while she's kidnapped, there's some people start getting murdered, and then they all blame it on her. And so she climbs to the top of this huge tower in this very dramatic panel that Mizuki swiped from another Japanese artist comic. And right when she's about to jump off and kill herself, a huge murder of crows, that's what you call a big flock of crows, right? A murder of crows comes and takes her and flies her away. And the father's like, "Oh, my baby, she's dead. She's going to be eaten to death," or whatever. And the old lady comes out, and she's like, "No, your daughter's fine. She's living a happy life, but I wanted you to know what it felt like when you killed my cat." So it's revenge is best served over a decade and a half, apparently. So anyway, that's the story.
Okay. So that was just a one shot the first time.
It was a book. So at the time, rental comics were either anthologies, or artists were commissioned to make one shot, almost like graphic novels. And because this particular one was not that bloody, even though it's pregnant woman is dead and her baby crawls from the grave. It's not visually, it's still very palatable, But when we get to, so that's 1958, when that one came out. And then he uses the character I mentioned again in 1961 in Hakaba no Kitaro, and then later on Neko Musume shows up. But if we go chronologically, we can switch to the other creator who you may have heard of, Umezu Kazuo. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, the name sounds familiar.
Do you know the
I think.
drifting classroom?
Yeah, okay. Kumar and someone else, Emmett, maybe, talked about it on Deconstructing Comics a while back.
So, good old Umezu, as he's sometimes called. Let me just tell you a little bit. When I first came to Japan in '94, my boss's wife had a couple of his comics laying around, and I read through them, and they were so horrific that I almost threw up. That it really made me sick.
Wow.
It was that just the visuals were that disgusting, even though they were in black and white. But I was like, "Ugh," and so I I basically I I not boycott, but I decided I'm not reading this guy ever again. And for 20 years, I did not read him.
Wow.
20 years until I was tasked with coming up with a history of Japanese horror comics. And then I'm like, well, I can't ignore that guy. And then I came across the Drifting Classroom, which was amazing because it's elementary school kids, because all the adults are completely useless when the whole school is suddenly thrust like either a million years in the past or the future. I don't know because I haven't finished reading the series yet. But all the adults lose their minds and they're useless and they're like killing kids and killing each other and killing themselves. And as, adults do when they're faced with with a reality that's too strange. What I like about that series is that the kids solve every problem and there's never not a problem. Just they keep coming and coming. With knowledge they learned at elementary school, Tim. I mean, isn't that just fascinating? Because they're like, wait. Do you remember what we learned in science class last week?
Okay, that's interesting. So, do you think that was his point in making that comic? That what you learn in elementary school will get you through life?
I think it was a point, because his stuff is very subversive, and so it's kind of strange seeing him like maybe push the hey, public education ain't that bad, but I mean, basically, like the main kid, he's not 100% like sweet kid. He has a huge fight with his mom before he gets transported, and so he's dealing with feelings of guilt, but he's also having to take a leadership position. I think it's really interesting, and just the fact that it's all this knowledge that they got in elementary school just blows my mind because I don't remember a darn thing from elementary school except for how much I hated it.
But Umezu did a cat-related character.
He did a couple. So the earliest example I have is Neko, which means cat face.
Mm-hmm.
And it was originally published in 1963. It was a rental comic, just like the Kaiki Neko Musume. And it is bloody as heck. And I don't know why I'm saying heck instead of hell. I don't know. I've turned my meter below PG-13. It's like down to G+. For some reason. But I'm talking torture. Like hot pokers in the eye, and like really I'm like flipping the pages like fast because it's like ouch. So let me tell you this crazy story. So Lord Masanobu, so we're in the past. Lord Masanobu hates cats. Already I'm getting like Cats of Ulthar, H.P. Lovecraft. It's a short story where the guy who hates cats and kills these other people's cats, all the cats of the neighborhood suddenly attack him one night and he's never heard from again. But anyway, Lord Masanobu hates cats. they're saying like, why does he hate cats so much? I don't know. He's like, he was born in the year of the rat. I don't know if maybe that's something. His eye was scratched out by a cat. Oh no, that's it. That's what it is.
Okay.
When he was a kid, his eye was scratched out. So he has basically all the cats in the town murdered to death. And there's pages and pages of bloody cat killing. I just like flip, 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 flip. You know, if you flip it fast enough, it's like a splatter movie. No, it's horrible. So anyway, his son is born, and he's like, it's a boy. And the son is born with a cat face. Not just eyes, like cat face. And not cute. Not a cute cat face. And the Lord's like trying to kill him, but they're like, no, it's your son. So anyway, years later, the son has grown up and basically like has become the new Lord, but he's cat looking and not attractive, you know. And he's not only hideous looking, he's also a terrible, terrible person. And so he's kind of torturing. He's trying to get this one girl to be his wife, and she's like, nah. You know? And so he's like, I'm gonna torture your dad. And she's like, yes, but I can't. I just can't. That's the only, you know, anything else, just not. And tortures the dad to death. And then he gets the boyfriend. He's like, okay, I'm gonna mess up your boyfriend. And she's like, but I love him, and you know, I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to marry you. So, you know, all right. And so he cuts the sides of the mouth of the boyfriend, and like basically carves him up so that he starts to look like a cat. And also like both him and the boyfriend, they both like lose an eye. So he's a one-eyed, ugly cat person, and now he's made like a doppelganger of himself with the boyfriend. But the girl's like going up to the disfigured boyfriend, and she's like, I don't care, you know, like, I love you. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought that is not what I expected was going to happen. So she loves her disfigured boyfriend, Bungo, great name. And somehow Bungo gets free. He traps Hidenobu, the new lord, and he takes his position, and he starts ordering people around, and basically becomes kind of a jerk. And so, but finally, Azusa, the girl, comes, and he's like, it's me, and finally we can be together. And she's like, you can't fool me. You know, like she no longer believes it's him. And in the end, like, everything burns down, and it's, you know, it's this whole horrible, bloody, painful tragedy. And you know, you can see a huge difference in this and what the next story, which is almost the same story. You know? And the difference is that rental comics had no oversight, you know?
Okay.
They went right to the rental shops. There's no big publisher. So basically, you know, the publisher would just say to the artist, draw me 100 pages of something.
Okay, so no editor or anything, no filter, just it's like web comics.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of interesting themes, some anti-establishment type themes creep into a lot of rental comics, but this one, mostly blood and torture.
Okay.
You know, and so 2 years later, he is now publishing in Weekly Comics. And he publishes a story called Neko no Shoujo, the girl with cat eyes. And stepping on people's feet here. So, and this is like basically his big magazine manga debut. I mean, he'd done other stories, but this was like a longer story. And Lord Kaga hates cats and has them all killed. Stop me if you've heard this. No. He has twin girls, Hana and Yuki, Princess Hana, Princess Yuki. Yuki's born with cat eyes, though.
Okay.
Yeah, so and Kaga hates cats so much that he slowly puts poison in her food, poisons her to death day by day. She's getting weaker and weaker. The whole time she's carving a wooden statue and carving and carves and finishes it, and it's like this wooden cat. I don't think she quite finishes it, but she carves this wooden cat, and then she dies. And then generations and generations later, the Kaga family still surviving, and they have twin girls, and one of them finds the cat statue, and she kind of transforms into a cat girl and goes a little bit weird. And the other sister is like, she keeps hearing this like chuck, 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 chuck kind of sound. And nobody else hears it but her, but she's like, what the hell is going on? And she finally tracks down her sister, who is carving something. And the sister, being like stopped in the middle of her work, loses her mind, chases her twin sister up the stairs, falls off herself, and dies. Which, you know, ouch. So they bury her, but the sister finds the cat statue, and then later, the dead sister, crawls out of the grave, and
is she a baby?
No. But she's terrorizing everybody, and she has a totally cat face, and she's terrorizing everybody, but all she wants is the statue. And so they give her the statue. She finishes carving it. The spirit of the cat ancestor, leaves her, goes into the statue, and she's fine and back to normal, and everybody's happy.
And alive.
And alive. And alive. So, very little blood, zero torture. But it starts out about the same.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So that was 1965.
Coming up, why are there so many scary cat stories in manga? Also, we veer over to the American side and talk about the Marvel Comics character Tigra. You might recall that a while back I made years of back episodes available in this feed. I gave that up though, because the feed goes through my own WordPress installation, even though the MP3s themselves are hosted on Libsyn, and so I was running up bandwidth charges. I could switch the feed to come straight from Libsyn, but many of those files are missing titles and show notes, and it would take some time to get all of that filled in. Therefore, I'm setting up a new Patreon goal that would unlock me doing the work to switch to that feed and make episodes going back to 2006 available in the feed. Don't forget, we also have more immediately reachable goals to make the first 30 episodes of Deconstructing Comics available again on our site. Those episodes from the initial stage of the show, featuring me, Mulele, and Brandon, are currently not available anywhere, but we can get closer to unlocking them with your monthly donation. Check out all our goals and patron perks at patreon.com/deconcomics.
Sawate. My name is Stella, and I am the host of Batgirl to Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Batgirl to Oracle is a podcast dedicated to Barbara Gordon, the first woman to hold the mantle of Batgirl for an extended period of time, roughly 1967 to 1988. The goal of Batgirl to Oracle is to examine the character's history from her first appearance as Batgirl and continuing through her tenure as Oracle. Each episode looks at a vintage issue of Detective Comics or Batman, as well as other books like Justice League and Freedom Fighters, and modern issues of Batgirl and Birds of Prey. I also keep track of news involving Batgirl and other members of the Bat family, and I have a revolving series of segments like Babs in the Tube, which highlights appearances of Babs in TV and film, Shipper Spotlight, which looks at a variety of comic and pop culture couples, gives their history, and determines whether they are hot or not, Reading with Stella, which could be described as an audio drama, or just me reading a book that relates to Babs or doesn't, and of course, the mainstay literature recommendation. I have been blessed to interview writers Scott Beatty and Chuck Dixon on their Batgirl Year 1 work, Brian Q. Miller on his Batgirl run, Dwayne Swarzinski and Christy Marks on their separate Birds of Prey work, and the creators and actors of The Batgirl Spoiled, the web series. I hope to interview more creators and actors in the future. My goal, most importantly, is to make a fun, entertaining, and thoughtful show that people enjoy and from which they learn. Find the show online at thebatmanuniverse.net and iTunes, and follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at Batgirl to Oracle. Thank you, and fly on, Babs lovers.
So, why do these creators want to do comics about kind of cat people?
I'm so glad you asked me that, Tim. Because I happen to have an answer. Well, Japan has a very interesting relationship with cats. They see them as protectors, but also monsters. It's not clear exactly when cats came to Japan. There's a couple of different theories that have all been kind of somewhat disproved. Apparently, cats have been around a lot longer than most people thought in Japan. But in Japan, they make everything into a monster because their monsters aren't all necessarily evil. Some of them are just like neighborhood helpers, and like our own little people. Sometimes they're evil spirits and sprites, and sometimes they're helpful little elves and dwarves making shoes and such. So there's two main cat monsters in Japan. You have the Neko. Bakeru means to transform, so they can change into people, and then you have the Nekomata, which are the cats you see with the two tails. Apparently after a cat lives its normal lifespan and it's still alive, its tail splits in half and starts to gain mystical powers and such.
Okay.
And it also does some shape shifting and such, So there's these stories, and then there's an actual historical incident happened in the 16th century, about an hour north of where I am right now, in Saga, called the Nabeshima Bakeneko Sodo. And it's like this big thing happened in where I don't know, this family, there's trouble, and basically getting rid of the cat solved the problem somehow. So that cat is known as a monster cat, and when the first Japanese horror movies start showing up around 1910, it only takes them 2 years to start making cat horror movies, and so in 1912, you have the cat story based on the story I just told you. And then 2 years later, 4 cat movies in the same year, monster cats. And then they just keep making them. So it's by 1975, 53 scary movies with cat in the title. It doesn't mean they're not showing up in other places. So there's an obsession there. There's a focus on cats for sure. Also, about hour and a half south of here, I visited a shrine where it's a cat shrine. And basically it's a temple. It's a cat temple.
Okay.
It's because it's Buddhist.
Uh-huh.
And basically, the one big head honcho priest came into town and basically brought up all these trumped up charges against the head of a rival temple and got him sacked, basically, And the guy committed suicide, and his mom came, and his mom and her cat, they came, and then every day the mom had her cat, she would cut herself, had the cat lick the blood, and she cursed that guy. And finally, her and the cat jumped off a cliff. I'm sure the cat wasn't wait a minute, what now? And, kind of. But the guy's daughters died one by one, the priest that had brought the trumped-up charges. So he finally, realized that this was not going to go well. And so he admitted to his transgressions, and he built the shrine dedicated to the cat. And apparently that stopped all the cursing and stuff. So if you go to there, you can see there's a little, instead of 2 dogs in front of the shrine, you have 2 cats. You know, usually in Japan temples you have the two lion-looking dogs, but they have cats instead.
Okay.
And that character is the basis of, now I'm bringing it back to comics, bringing it back. That character is the basis for one of the main characters in Natsume Yujincho, which is a very popular comic and animated series that takes place about an hour and a half south of me.
Okay.
So yeah, there's an obsession, there's a fixation on cats here.
And does that go back to before film?
Yes, because those films are based on stage plays.
Okay.
Yeah. So like even like early comics and early film, they just like took off. Like they, even though the stage tradition continued and still continues today, the movies were basically filmed plays at the beginning.
Sure.
You know, like the 1931 Dracula is basically, it's based on the stage play version and looks like it's taking place on a stage. So that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, been around. Do you have a favorite cat horror movie?
Well, I'm not much of a horror person anyway, so no, I don't.
House. You have to see House, though. The 1977 wacko psychedelic Japanese horror movie House. It will change your life, Tim. It would change your life. That's a great movie. What about, you've never seen the classic The Cat People with Simone?
No, I haven't.
Well, they remade it in the 80s
Right,
with
I remember,
Nastasia Kinski, right?
Yeah, I remember when that was out, and the David Bowie music that was in it.
That's right. But man, if you go back and watch the first one, that Simone, gosh, she is gorgeous. And it's all about sexual repression. So this Serbian woman working in New York, she falls in love, but she can't give herself openly because if she gives in to her sexual desire, she basically turns into a Black Panther and kills people. So for 1942, that's a pretty deep take.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't tend to think that 1940s movies are like that, but...
Oh, man, I was blown away. I was like, this is quite a bit of subtext here. So, anyway, I have one more manga one. Actually, two more manga ones to get through.
All right.
The next one is also Umezu Kazuo, and that's his that's his popular character, the cat-eyed boy, Neko Kozo. And this was serialized in Shonen Gaho, which that company is defunct now. Then it was serialized in Shonen King, and eventually I think Shogakukan, like Shonen Sunday, I think they kind of took it over. But it was an animated show in 1976, and they made a film in 2006, and they re-released the comics in 2006, and that's where I first read it. Is I bought that release, and I let somebody borrow it, and never came back.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
Yeah. So this story is quite interesting and sad because the Neko Kozo, as he is called, the cat-eyed boy, he is born to a Nekomata, like a split-tailed cat monster, and a woman who we find out later she's a yokai. Like, she runs off into the woods with her and then gives birth to this cat boy, and her husband follows her and sees her, and she's like, oh, you saw me. We could have been happy, but since you saw me, which happens in lots of Japanese folktales, like you see their real, the magical creature in its real situation, and then the spell is broken, and, now you have to get a divorce. It's rough. So Catboy is born surrounded by all these hideous monsters. And they're like, oh, it's disgusting. It's so human looking. And so they want to kill it. But the father somehow runs away with the boy. But the father is eventually killed by the wife and his what he thought was human son, because we find out that they're actually monsters too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cat-eyed boy is on his own. And it basically follows him through a series of like episodic adventures. They don't tie together at all. He just is living in someone's attic and kind of watching them live their lives. And then sometimes he tries to help people. And so he'll fight monsters. He'll like really work hard to fight these monsters. And then when they're defeated, the people are like, oh, it's all this boy's fault. He's weird. With the cat eyes and such. And so they'll like try to kill him, drive him out of town and stone him and stuff. So he's not accepted by the monsters, not accepted by the humans. He's in this kind of liminal space where he still mostly tries to do the right thing. He plays his little jokes sometimes. He's got some powers, but it's an interesting take, like because it's from the Catboy's point of view. He often talks to the reader, just looks right at us with his creepy eyes and says, I'm going to see what they're doing. And then he, goes and watches these people. He's like a voyeur, but he also gets involved. And it really makes, it obviously makes you think about how people who are different aren't necessarily evil, because what happens is he runs across this group, which in the English version released by Viz in 2008, they call it like the Band of 100 Demons or something like that. I was thinking of it looked more like a not a band, but like an organization, because the guy had like a business card, the leader of it, and basically they're humans who are born looking hideous or different or whatever. They've got different, like, we're not talking about like he's got a short arm. We're talking like he's got two arms growing out of his forehead, kind of different. But they basically don't like how they're treated by the humans, and so they want to get their revenge. And they're like, Catboy, you should join us because, they treat you like crap too. And he's like, well, you guys seem kind of evil. I'm not into that. So that's one that I would definitely, like of all the ones I've mentioned, that's one of the few that's been translated into English. And it is one that I would definitely recommend checking out. It looked like it was translated by a company, not an individual. So the design of the book has been praised, but I honestly do not like how the book was laid out. Like it's using the comics font so that it looks like a regular comic book, but it's often like using that font in like a vertical style, which is incredibly hard to read. And so I don't know. I think the translation is fine, but I don't like how the word balloons and the sound effects are handled at all. But yeah, so Cat-Eyed Boy, and then, like if we move back to Mizuki Shigeru's Gegege no Kitaro, that Neko Musume, cat girl, I guess, she's like my favorite character in that whole series. I have a couple of like pins that I got at some of the exhibitions I've been to. But she, in the animation, there's been 6 series, and they keep changing her. At first she has like a very early Showa haircut, like basically a bowl cut and a big old ribbon. They kept the ribbon, but they're trying to make her cuter. And then in the last 2 iterations, they went, no, we're going to go full moe. Now she's going to be sexy, cute. Sexy, cute. And, which, I get it, but I don't get it. Like, I like the original, and I'm not sure how old the character's supposed to be, so that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that she and Kitaro were kids.
Right, right. But definitely she looks like she's older than Kitaro in the most recent version.
Huh.
And I don't know if they actually made her older, but if they're going to make her look like that, they should set her age as older, because it's not like super sexy hot. It's just cute with those, but with the cat eyes, they're somewhat seductive.
Yeah, I'm looking at some pictures on Google Images, and yeah, I recognize kind of the original one here, and then this other one looks like she's about 16.
Right?
And long legs and high heels and
ready for action.
Of some type or another.
Now, if you want to talk sexy Catwoman, with cat eyes, of course we have to talk about Tigra, the werewoman.
Right, from Marvel Comics.
Yeah, like Tigra, Tigra is so much my fetish that it is crazy. It's crazy. Like completely furry with tiger stripes and black bikini and cat eyes and long flowing orange hair is just so much in my wheelhouse that I have to take a break. I'll be right back. Now I'm back. And now I'm back. Yeah, I love Tigra. But Tigra is like... Spider-Woman was my first love. My first Marvel, I'm obsessed. Mm-hmm. And then Tigra is probably my second. But they're both treated especially bad, I feel, by writers, because they basically, every time they decide to use her, they're like, okay, we're going to change her again. Change her origin, change her powers, change her personality. And it's something that just bugs the crap out of me, I've only read Tigra as a back character in some other stories, I haven't read many of her as the main character, but it's a similar, I get it just reading through her history. It seems like, that's the problem with having a character run so long, Tim, is that they're just okay, what are we going to do with her now? They'll just come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. They made her 200 feet tall. MODOK did. And then this is from Wikipedia, in his failed quest for love. And so that's what you do, apparently, is you turn women into big old scary hairy women. Did you like Tigra at all? I just thought I loved her design. And
well, yeah, I mean, in spite of being furry, she's also kind of, attractive, the shape and such. I was telling you off podcast here, iFanboy recently talked about John Byrne's so-called Vision Quest arc of West Coast Avengers from about, what was the year? It was around 1990. I don't remember exactly. And I was completely out of comics at the time. I was in Japan. I'd just gotten married. I had no way to get Marvel Comics, even if I wanted to, as far as I knew anyway. But yeah, Tigra was in that story, and I was kind of puzzled. So she's walking around in a bikini, and then she takes even that off to go to sleep. Well, kind of what's the difference? Because you're already almost naked. But yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit, what's the word I want? Fan service?
Yeah. Little titillating.
Yeah.
And Spider-Woman, she basically, her costume was just sprayed on.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't have a cape or anything. She just has a big long ass wig.
Mm-hmm.
But they're saying on Wikipedia that she's originally like based off of the cat, that character, which I think eventually became Hellcat.
Well, okay, so the cat became Tigra. I don't quite know how, but yeah, she's Greer Nelson.
Ah, okay.
The only time I ever saw the cat was in, of all places, Spidey Super Stories, the Electric Company Marvel comic from the starting in about 74. And so at some point after that, she, I don't know, was bitten by a radioactive cat. I don't know. But became Tigra. But no, Hellcat then maybe it was created a little after that. Now, Hellcat is Patsy Walker,
That's
who
right.
was originally a character in this like high school kind of romance comic that Marvel did long ago. Maybe before they were even Marvel, I think. It might go back to the 50s.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what they did. They're like, well, we're already paid for this one printed magazine to continue, and if we want to start a new one with a new name, that's extra money that we have to register. And so they just like, we're just going to change the name, change the character, and yeah, they did the same thing happened. I think it was Harvey or maybe it was ACG. They had a character, Black Cat, which was a female superhero. And then when superheroes kind of lost popularity, they said like, okay, now it's a horror title. And some of the most grotesque horror stories and art were from that magazine. And that's one of the reasons the whole seduction of the innocent. We're like, look at this. This is nuts. And then when horror went, they said, oh, no, now it's a Western comic. Yeah. So you have Black Cat Western and things like this going on. But they'll just... Yeah, they're saying here that Tigra left the West Coast Avengers because of the anti-killing policy. But see, that's not a Tigra I can get behind.
Well, yeah, Tigra in that Vision Quest storyline was becoming like more like a wild cat, and it wasn't explained yet why that was. I would have to read the next arc, but yeah, have you ever read any of that 80s, 90s West Coast Avengers?
No, I just looked at the covers and snickered to myself.
I guess Byrne wasn't actually on the book very long, but that part that he did was really engaging. I enjoyed reading that.
Like, I was mostly buying like alternative type stuff, like, and not necessarily hip stuff. We're talking like ElfQuest and Flaming Carrot, and I liked parodies of superheroes, so like Megaton Man and stuff like that. But when Alpha Flight started, I was like, okay, here's a series with new characters I can get off from the ground. And so I started reading that. But then Logan kept showing up.
He's Canadian, eh?
That's right. And I'm like, I guess I gotta buy some X-Men now. And so I just like bought back issues, like the covers that I liked. And they happened to be some of the really good stuff, like Future Past and stuff like that. But I had some older issues of Avengers, but I was into the Defenders.
Yeah. I used to read those too.
I liked Valkyrie. So, well, that's what I have. There's definitely tons of other of these like book one shot cat related horror comics, but those two, the Neko Musume, the cat girl and the cat-eyed boy, those are the two that stick out the most. And but I was just surprised. I kept coming across more and more cat horror, And then when I looked up like the history of Japanese horror movies, and just like, oh my God, there's 50 of these things. It's, it's crazy.
Wow. Okay, well, thanks for coming on and discussing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And one of these days, I'll tell you about mermaids.
Okay. And listeners, if you haven't checked out our Full Metal Alchemist manga podcast, The Law of Equivalent Exchange, please do.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun doing that with you. It's for me. It's one of the most crafted long form comic series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for having me on, and don't hit any cats on the way home.
I am home.
Oh, that's right. I'm home too.
Check out Patrick's work at patocon.com. Also, I've linked from the show notes to more information about the manga we discussed. You can help Deconstructing Comics and all our podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics, and go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and we'll critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. Next week on Critiquing Comics, Adam and I discuss an unusual submission. An artist asks us to critique a comic he drew 26 years ago. So we take a look at the first issue of superhero series Circle 7 by writer Joshua Lauber and artist Daniel M. Rodriguez. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.